We're going to talk today about building a community economy one-pager, and we've got a small group, so we've got 20 to 25 of us. So definitely we want to make this interactive and hopefully come away with this with some idea about one, do you want to do this and what would it take? And hopefully we'll step through this in a way that that gives you some confidence that this is something that you might want to look at. So building a community economy one-pager, what we're going to do today is talk about what is a one-pager and why build one, right? Then I'll talk about the economy one-pager example that we've got and the data details. Maria is going to talk to you about her experience. She was our test case for this and doing this project. And then I'll do a walkthrough demonstration. So I'll actually walk through the steps of doing it. It takes not that long of a time to do one, so we'll walk through it. And then we'll end with some time just to answer some questions and get some more ideas as well. So we'll start with an overview. What is a one-pager? So a one-pager is a focused, timely information piece. So it's focused on one topic, one pager. We really just want to share out one piece of information. And a lot of times we're busy with a lot of things we're doing, and we don't have time to read big reports. We don't have time to read all the information that's coming across our email. But a one pager is something where at least if you get it, you're only going to have to commit to looking at one page of data. A lot of times that eases the transition for people to read some information. And it's also timely. So you want to have something that's timely, that changes when new information is available. And that's another reason to look at a one-pager. It's also easy to print, read, and share. So it's something where if you send it to your stakeholders, they can print it out. They can also share it with others in their chain, of people with information they want to share. And so that's the beauty of a one-pager, is it kind of also facilitates sharing something that's easy for someone to read and is informative. And then lastly, I would say a one-pager is also a template. It's something that should be something that you repeat. It saves time by doing that repetition. So if you want to build one for each of your counties, you have 3 of those, you use a template, you just change a few things. And also it puts that brand as consistent. So every time you're doing this, you have the same branding that looks the same. And every time you send it out, it has that common feel. So why build one? Well, with that, Sarah's going to talk a little bit about why we want to talk about building a one-pager.
Yeah, well, first I want to give a shout out to Katie Nooner. This is one of the suggestions she had during the What Exceed Do For You webinar. And Katie had said, what about doing a one-pager with county information, something shorter, easier to digest than the MZ report. Definitely something easier than the data profile that we had in the old version of the Connect strategy. So thank you, Katie. Why build a one-pager? One-pagers are just fantastic ways to communicate. They really cross audiences. For me in Washington, D.C., everything's a one-pager. If you can't get something down to a one-pager, no one on the Hill is going to look at it. It's going to be hard to get administration officials to look at your idea. So learning how to succinctly communicate your main ideas in an attractive one-pager is a really good skill to have for your volunteer work, for your professional life, for everything, I think. But we really think that this will help you connect with stakeholders. It can be kind of in lieu of a business card. You can kind of hand out this one-pager that Alan's going to show you how to do today. And it's a great way to connect with people, to show them the value that you add. I think in this budget crunch time, it never hurts for you to communicate to people how much value you create for your community, or how much value you create for them.
And I think the benefit of doing this, like Sarah mentioned, the MSI reports that you get are valuable, and they have some characteristics like estimating information where stuff like this will not always give you, because this is based on federal data, BLS, and other sources. So there is importance in having the MSI reports, but this gives you a little bit of a chance every month to kind of learn about what's happening right now with the most current data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics around what's happening in your economy, and to learn a little bit about the data behind it, because a lot of times you don't want to, if you just pass along information, you want to also be seen by your community as a person who understands that information to a level where you can talk about it if there's a basic question. So this also gives you that opportunity. And then lastly, it's really a fairly efficient thing to do. It's quick enough that you could do this once a month, spend less than an hour, and have some information that you could send. And it's also flexible. You really, this is up to you. You know, you don't have to do this, but if you want to do this, you may not do it for all of your counties. Maybe you have a certain county that really asks for and wants to engage, but you could. And you could also do more than this. We're going to show you the one pager and kind of talk you through how to do this. This doesn't mean you can't do something different. You could do something different, but this is an easy way to at least get the ball rolling if you're thinking about considering this. So the economy one pager example, and again, this was built off of your ideas about, hey, I'd like to be able to provide some basic information. Well, one of the basic things that changes every month is the labor force information. So around the third week of every month from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and in Missouri, MERIC is the Bureau of Labor Statistics office. They produce this report that tells you the labor force information for each county. So every month that changes. And so every month you have something in that upper left corner that you can change and say, well, here's the labor force information for December of 2020, for example. So it's very current, and it's a source straight from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Then there's stuff like the annual population and gross domestic product. It doesn't change but once a year. However, and that data is usually available in November, December of the year. The great thing about it is it's just at a glance, a real quick number on the population, how you rank in Missouri, and then your GDP and how that ranks. And that's an interesting thing, actually, that ranking, because if you think about population, in this case, Barton County ranks 82nd in Missouri, but 80th in GDP. So it's actually ranking a little bit higher in GDP than the population. So there's a little bit of information there as well. And then finally, the private sector industry trends. This is quarterly, so every 3 months it comes out, and it lags by about 7 months. And so this is June 2020 data here that we're showing, but it's really fairly current in the scheme of things in terms of data, and it gives you a lot more details that you're not going to get just from your monthly labor force. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the caveats around that. But the thing that's great about this, and when I talk about, you know, different types of data, the good thing about this is public data. It's literally there for anyone to see, and so that's a good thing. It's from the U.S. government sources, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Economic Analysis, and the Census Bureau. So one, it's freely available for anyone. You're just putting it together in a quick package for your county. Secondly, the monthly labor force is that thing that allows you to have new data and to put information out there and to give that to your community. But it is limited in detail. You don't get a lot of information with that. So you do have to, you want to add additional data for details. It's not updated as often though. So really, if you're going to update this with the same exact data for 3 months, you're just literally updating, you know, the labor force, and then you'll turn on that 4th month and update the QC, the industry data. And then once a year, you're updating the population. So it's very quick. Once you build it once, actually, it's probably even a really fast update for most monthly data things. And then finally, this is an information piece that just shows you the numbers as they are. A lot of times when we're trying to give you information, and when you're conveying information to people, you're trying to show context as well. So how does this compare to Missouri? How does this compare over time? Those are absolutely important concepts. And you could add some context by this if you wanted to. So for example, under quick county facts, we have the ranking. You could put under the labor force information, the Missouri rate. What is the Missouri unemployment rate? There's more data you could add, but it adds time and it adds context to do that. Trends is something you could do as well. So there's more you could do, but just know that it adds more complexity. You could do a 2-pager, you know, you could have a front and back if you wanted to, that would add some additional detail. But what you would want to get out of this is a product that you send to your stakeholders and they hopefully share with other stakeholders. And so an FYI, here's what's happening in your economy. So it's less about maybe an evaluative piece, but more of an information piece and just an update. So with today, we're going to have a template that we're going to go over, but there's also an accompanying Excel sheet that really steps us through the collection of these 3 different data elements. And so I'm going to actually walk through that with you and go through those steps. There's 3 tabs, one for labor force, one for the QCW, which is the private sector data, and then one for population GDP. Now there's links in each tab and step-by-step instructions in red. There's 3 tabs, but of course, if you have questions as you get into this, absolutely email me, call me. I'm always available to help you out with this. Going through this the first time, you're probably going to have some questions, and so absolutely want to help you if you're going to do this. Now, there's some caveats for this data, and this is part of that learning process that's helpful, and when you're conveying this to others. So, for example, the labor force data is based on a U.S. sample of, I think, around 60,000 households, if my memory serves me right. So it's kind of a small survey in the big scheme of things, but it's done monthly. That information is combined with information on layoffs, on unemployment insurance claims from the states and the counties, and all of that goes into this big estimate of what the labor force is. And this estimates everybody. So this is self-employed, farmers, every person in that county. This is an estimate of 1, what is the labor force, 2, who's employed, and then 3, who's unemployed. But it's an estimate. You're not going to actually go, in this case, there's 258 people in Barton County. There's actually not 250 people you can go chase down and find out that they're unemployed. This is an estimate based on that county. It is also preliminary, so it will get revised. There is no doubt it will get revised. So in any given month, you're going to see something that is, a number. Sometimes that number will go up or down, especially with smaller counties that are rural. You can see those numbers spike up and down. Sometimes it's related to a layoff event, but you don't always know. In the best of worlds, we like to take this monthly data and smooth it out over 3 months to have like a moving average, but that gets more complicated, and we don't really want to do that here. But just to know that this information is based on a U.S. sample, and it's an estimate of all employment, but it is preliminary.
I'll just add to that, Alan, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Especially for those of you in rural counties, because there's quite a few of you. If you're doing these every quarter and you see a weird spike, I definitely encourage you to maybe think about using, the prior set of data, or, or adding a little asterisk and saying, this is a little bit off trend and subject to revision. Just, use your head, give Alan a call, give me a call if you're unsure, but it's okay to say, this looks not quite right. I'm gonna hold back.
Yeah, and the good thing about this is that the site that I'm going to show you on there, there's 2 sources. This is pulled from a PDF file, which is just a quick grab, but they also have a database. And so you can look at unemployment, labor, or you can look at these actual numbers by month for your county going back many years. And so if you were to see, 258, 300, 275, 240, 500, and, and it jumps around, then those are some warning signs. Maybe if you see a very big number that goes up really fast, that you might want to be cautious about that. In my time at Merrick, maybe half a dozen times in 20 years, you would get something that was really kind of egregious, that an estimate was really off, or at least it seemed off. And then it would get revised later. So there are those cases. And if you find something that's really out of whack with what a trend is that you're seeing, then definitely give me a call. We can check up on it. Sometimes we don't know the answer. Sometimes it's just some fluke. But if that's the case, you can just choose not to do it that month if that's a problem, or show more of a trend, average. But that gets more complicated, and so we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The information below that is the private sector industry trends. These are private sector jobs from administrative data. So this is data reported by companies to the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. So they report this every quarter from payroll firms. So these are firms that employ people. So this is not self-employed only people, but you're employing firms. It's estimated that that covers generally 95 to 98% of all businesses out there. So it's a very big group of employment. So it's definitely good for that. It does lag 7 months though. So for example, we're seeing June 2020 information now. It'll probably be late March, early April before we see the end of 2020 information. But still, it's there and it's good. It's got some good details. Now, this is private sector only. So we're not showing government employment here, and we're not showing the self-employed, and we're also not showing small farmers. It's estimated that this actually gets about 75% of agricultural production, but not the smaller farmers. And when we look at the QCW data, this is the industry private sector data, we'll note some location quotients, which are really strong in some of these counties. And that's an indicator, obviously, that a lot of times it is very concentrated in agriculture, but you'll see really the larger payroll ag businesses in there. All right, now, before I dive into the example, I wanted to let Maria kind of share her experience. We gave her this template to use, but part of that was prior to this, even she had been doing some work with her counties to look at unemployment data and had shared that. So Maria, if you're able to share with us your experience, one about your past experience working with your counties on providing data, but then how this template was for you in working through that.
Sure. Thank you, Alan. I think I first want to mention one thing that I saw this morning that I was thinking on just a recommendation on the left corner square, that's square we have on labor force, employed and unemployment. I'm thinking it may be good to add state below so we can compare some of that, or look at the unemployment rate so it can be comparable, just a suggestion. And I think that I'm glad Sarah mentioned the one-pager thing, because I remember my previous boss, when I worked for a think tank in Brazil, one of the things that I heard all the time, and he just hammered us on this. I mean, you have one slide. You have one slide to present things to government or to the corporate world. And we would work days or weeks sometimes in putting data into one page. And so I think we're blessed here that Alan put this together for us and made it easy. What I would say is, what I do in my area is when I get the Missouri economy updates, I actually created a mailing list that I send to people that are in economic development in my area. And it's probably a 2 or 3 sentences that are kind of like what Hannah already includes for the social media post. And then I attach the slides as a PDF and I send that to everybody. And that has been extremely welcome in my area. People love that. And not just people in economic development. I've been getting requests from people who work for the library, healthcare workers that do the accounting and things like that for the hospitals. So my mailing list just keeps growing. Now my council members want to get that. So it's been a huge hit. And in the sense, I mean, I'm not doing this. This is Alan preparing those for us. So it's a great thing that we have. So what I plan to do is to add these one-pagers to those to that email every quarter. I guess the question I had also for the Exceed team is, what are the months or what are good dates when we should probably have it in our calendars that we should be checking for the updated data, so we kind of have it there and then we go and do these every couple of months. And then it's kind of in our radar and in our calendar. I think it's another suggestions I would have. Then other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, Alan made it easy. You just have to go in and copy things from the links he sent us. So it may take you a little bit more the first time, but it's probably going to take about 20 minutes of your time once you get to know how to use this. So I think that's what I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Well, thank you, Maria. I'll cover some of that here. Let's see, we did have one question. How would we include small farm, self-employed, and gig? Can we pull info in from the annual ag report? I don't remember what it's called. You would not want to mix this with that, because this is a different data source. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so you wouldn't, this is data that tells one part of your employment picture in your county. And so that's a different picture. And this is one where you're trying to just update this quarterly with that private sector detail of information. So you still have your EMSI reports, and you can still talk about those absolutely with your counties and your stakeholders there. This would be an update with that really around private sector industries and your big industries there. And so that's important, but it doesn't take the place of this other information. This is just a vehicle for you to update them on some changes. But also, like Sarah mentioned earlier on, it's also a way to connect with your stakeholders more often than just, once a year on some of this data or once a quarter on this data. You can update this once a month and have a way to kind of keep in front of some of your stakeholders around the idea of what's happening in their economy. So, all right, so we'll talk about, Maria, we'll talk about when to look for those updates when I go through the example. And then also talk about some of the additional things you could use this template to build more off of this. We don't want to make this a something that seems like a lot of work to do initially. This is just something that if you want to do it, the first time it'd probably take you an hour to do all 3 counties if you wanted to, but after that, it might take 15 minutes to 20 minutes a month to update. And that's totally reasonable. If you wanted to add more to it and do more detailed stuff, absolutely. And we could help talk through some of that stuff, but we wanted to start out here with more of a demonstration here. So let me get started here with a walkthrough demo. So now I'm gonna escape out of this, and I'm gonna show my PowerPoint here. And we did this in PowerPoint because PowerPoints are easy for formatting. They're really easy to lay things out. And so that's why we did it in PowerPoint. Plus, you can turn this into a slide if you wanted to pretty easily, and you would just turn it into a landscape mode. So can everyone see the Excel here? We got the Excel up. Good. Okay, good. Saw a thumbs up from Sarah. So this is the Excel. And now I'm gonna also open up.
Sorry, Alan. That was a thumbs up, like pump it up a little bit.
Oh,
sorry.
Pump it up some. Okay.
I was
okay,
muted
gotcha.
and didn't realize I was muted. I apologize.
Gotcha. All right, so that's the
good.
Excel. And before we turn to that, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here. And I'm going to bump this up too, because I bet you it's pretty small. So there's several features of this PowerPoint here. And we'll start from the top. First, we're going to have the county that you're doing. In this case, we just got X county. So you use a template, fill in your county. And then whenever you're doing this, you would just change the date. So if you were to do this monthly, you would put February for this month. If you're going to put it out in March, that's just a place for you to have that date. Then when you go down here, you have different blocks. You have your labor force up here. You have your quick county facts. And then down here, you have your private sector industry trends. And so there's a couple of places where you could add context if you would like to. You could put information here in this text. You could put it down below in a little subtext below it. The unemployment rate and the labor force and unemployment rate, really for the state of Missouri, what you're going to probably want to do is just the unemployment rate. You probably don't want to show, the 2 million or whatever that are employed and unemployed with that. You could create another row in the table and actually have that in there as well, but that adds a lot of information. And if you really want them to focus on your county, then you would just have that there, but you could add that context. It's important, though, that you put the non-seasonally adjusted rate in there, because county level information is only not seasonally adjusted information. So what people hear a lot of times in media reports is the seasonally adjusted Missouri rate of unemployment. That adjusts for things like the changing of education when teachers come on and off, the fall when we have upticks in retail, and then the summer when we have people taking off, education and so forth. So seasonally adjusted is what people hear in the media a lot of times. And so that number for the state of Missouri is different than the non-seasonally adjusted number. So if you do include the Missouri number, you want to make sure you include the non-seasonally adjusted number. If you ever look at the maps on the Merrick site with the county unemployment maps, they will have the non-seasonally adjusted Missouri rate on that because you have to compare apples to apples. Then over here to our right, we have our county quick facts. And right now we have 2019 data from the US Census and Bureau of Economic Analysis. Now, luckily we can get all this data from one site and I'll show you how to do that here, but it's going to be population and then the rank for Missouri for how that county ranks, and then gross domestic product and how that ranks in Missouri as well. And like I said before, having that number 82 rank in Missouri, and you could put 82 out of 115 if you wanted to, but having that rank there is valuable. And then also seeing how that ranks with the GDP is also a little bit informative as well, because all things equal, if you're producing exactly as much GDP per population as other counties, you would see those ranks be pretty equal. And they're usually pretty close, but you'll see some counties, especially in urban counties, where they're going to probably rank even higher. Then we move down to the private sector industry trends. And here we have some information that explains a little bit about the details. This is non-farm, what we call non-farm payroll employment. Now there actually is farming in there, but we call it non-farm. That's what you'll hear in the media, because it doesn't cover a lot of self-employed farming. If you're a family-owned farm and you don't have any paid outside employees, then you're smaller, you're not going to be in here. So we just use that shortcut to say non-farm payroll employment. But there is farming in there, and so I'll show you that kind of that we can see that a little bit with some of this data. If there's an NA, that means not available, and that's either due to no data, very small data cells, not a lot of information, or it could be withheld to protect confidentiality. So that's an important thing to remember, is that with the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has two laws that govern what you can show, and basically it prevents them from disclosing any one business's information. And that's really important, because that's why private companies agree to voluntarily, give some of this information and to give this information to the government, is that there's also the protection that your employment, your wages will not be shared with others. So you will see sometimes that there's an NA. So for example, in this one down here at the bottom, we see other sources, other services, 14, and then we see NA. We see information, only 2 firms, and that's NA. So the things sometimes when you see NA, a lot of times that really does mean there's not a significant amount of employment in this area. So it's really not the fact that there's a huge data company here that we're just missing, but there could be cases where there is a huge company there and it is missing it. And so for example, in St. Louis County, you will not see Boeing information in there, because that's going to be a very big employer in one specific type of industry. And that's why EMSI is useful for doing some of those estimates. But you'll see that sometimes information is not there, and that's just why. The other thing you'll notice is that you're used to hearing about NAICS, the NAICS codes. And a lot of times we're giving you data in 2-digit NAICS, which is manufacturing is a 2-digit, construction is a 2-digit. And we're giving that information to you because that's a level of detail that shows, I think, around 20 something sectors, and is a good amount of detail. You can actually get that from the Merrick site, but a lot of times you get those NAs, because in very rural counties, a lot of times that information is suppressed, is not shown because of confidentiality. This is a higher level of information. These codes are actually BLS codes as well. They're higher level codes, but you'll notice they group things together. So for example, trade, transportation, and utilities, which is right over here, combines retail trade, wholesale trade, transportation, and utilities. And so you get a big group in here. You'll see natural resources and mining, for example, education and healthcare. And so you see a lot of things that are grouped. That grouping is helpful for showing information. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics can show more details at this level. And honestly, because you're trying to convey some information, this is probably a good level for this one pager. When you're actually wanting to dive deeper into some of the nitty gritty of what's happening into your economy and look at longer term trends in that context, this is not going to be enough by itself. But at a glance, this tells you quite a bit of information. So for example, in goods producing, so goods producing are agriculture, mining, construction, and manufacturing. So those are ones that produce a solid product at the end of the day. And there's different types of goods producing. There's durable and non-durable and so forth. But goods producing is the catch-all for those sectors. You'll see natural resources and mining in this county has 26 payroll establishments. You can see their average weekly wage compared to all industries. So all industries in the private sector is paying $700. Well, natural resources and mining's higher than that. Construction, manufacturing is lower. So that's at one point some useful information. You see the June employment. So you see the June 2020 employment in this sector. And then you also see the change over the year. So at a glance, you can see that manufacturing went down just a little bit and construction went up just a little bit. And then natural resources and mining went up large amount. Now, natural resources and mining will include agriculture, that's payroll. So you will see that there. And you see the percent change over the year. So that's important. Those two numbers are important together so that you're seeing one, the magnitude, which is that number, how was the overall change, but then also that percentage change as well. And then finally, over to the right, you see the location quotient. So as a reminder, the location quotient is an indicator of how concentrated a sector is compared to the US average. So a 1 means you're just as concentrated as the US. So manufacturing in this county is just as concentrated as the US. So it might be 10, 11% of employment. But you see natural resources and mining is 2.9. So it's almost 3 times as concentrated than the US average. And that's going to be likely our agriculture here in this case. So that's going to be that indicator that yes, you are concentrated in agriculture. Now you'll see down here at the professional business services, you're 0.5, so you're half as concentrated. This is a rural county, it's not a big city here, and typically professional and business services are going to be more concentrated in cities. So it's not that this county is doing anything wrong, it's just that that's what the data tend to do. So in rural counties, you're going to see usually a concentration in natural resources, a lot of times in manufacturing. Whereas you're not going to see concentrations typically in professional and business services, financial services, and so forth. So anyways, that's a recap kind of what some of that information is. Now at the bottom here, we also list those sources. And so we show the labor force unemployment rate and industry employment is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and Merrick. Demographics data is from the 5-year survey, because in some of these counties, 5-year data is all you have. And if you're going to ever compare your county demographics to Missouri demographics, you want to use the 5-year summary as well. So you're again comparing apples to apples. And then finally, gross domestic product for 2019. Now the question of when does this data become available? So every year in December, late November, usually December is when you're going to get the new updates for demographics and the new updates for the Bureau of Economic Analysis for the county level information for the prior year. So you're going to look for that around December timeframe. The quarterly data is going to be usually around the you think of January, February, March as the first quarter. In April, you're probably going to see the fourth quarter of 2014. Oh, I'm sorry, 2020. So you're going to look for that at that time. But I'm going to make it easy for you and just tell you, really, if you're going to do this every month, look at the 3rd week of every month, because that's when you're going to usually get the labor force data for that county. And then when you're going to update the annual data, you're going to look for that in the December timeframe. In your quarterly one, you can just check it every month. It takes a minute, and you can see if there's any updates. And so that'll just make life easy for you. And then down at the bottom, this is really kind of, to me, a very key part of this, is that you're not just sharing the data. That's obviously one reason why you're doing this. But you also want to share your services. You also want to share what it is that you do for your community and some of the programs that you offer. So this is where you have this box that you can fill in with what you want to fill in. Now I've put here that this is some of the services and program offerings. This is basically an open text box for you to put in what you would like to put in. Suppose you're doing a presentation in 2 weeks and you want to make everybody aware of that. You could put in there that you're doing a presentation and here's the Zoom link and here's the date and time. So you could use it to update people on some information like that as well if you wanted to. And then finally, down here at the bottom, you have the ability to add your picture and add your contact information. So that's information that you can update. All right, so now let's actually go through updating this. Right here we have information for Barton County, but I'm going to actually put in information because Maria was so nice generous to give us her time on this. I'm going to do her third county. So we've done Jasper and Barton. I'm going to do Dade County for this one. So I'm just going to do a save as. Actually, I've already started that. I've done the Dade County there. So now I'm going to go to this Excel sheet. And labor force is what I want to grab first. And it's monthly data, county labor force. So I'm going to click on this side here, this link. And it's going to pull up the monthly labor force document. This is a PDF file. And it's updated automatically. So every time you go to it, it's going to show the latest month that's available. In this case, it's December 2020. Now you'll scroll down and toward the end of the second page, you'll start to see the single county labor market areas. And you can see them ordered by their alphabetical order. And we see Dade County here. Now,
Alan,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you
go ahead.
amplify that a little bit?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate that. So here is that better? Okay. So here you see labor force data for December. And at the very top, you see the current month of December, labor force employment, unemployment number and rate. Now they have other information about the November rate, a year ago rate. And so you can look at that as well, but we're just going to go down here and they have data by different areas, by metropolitan areas and so forth. But we're going to grab just your county's information. So we know for Dade County, if we scroll back up here to the top, it's labor force, employment, and unemployment numbers. So we're just going to grab those numbers. So I'm going to highlight, and you can do that and just do copy. Now over here, we have these instructions. Find your county, cut and paste the individual data elements in there. Alternatively, you could type them in there, but I'm a big believer in pasting if you can, because that just avoids any errors. And then I always try to paste just the data. So I'm just going to paste the data. If I just did paste without without the formatting, it's going to give the formatting from the PDF, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back here and grab this one as well. And I'm going to do copy. Go over here, paste. Then I'm going to copy that one as well. Unfortunately, you can't just grab all four elements at one time and paste it. It takes this step here, but we'll copy this and paste it in here. It goes 460. So you're just going to need to add that back in there and make sure your unemployment rate is right. Now, you could also have that automatically calculated. If you update this, basically your unemployment rate is equal to that divided by your labor force. So there you go. You can have it automatically calculated if you wanted to. And you want to know the schedule of when this information comes out. Well, there is a schedule. So for example, this is sub-state labor force information. You can see that December came out on January 20, it came out, December came out on, here we go, January 27th. But now the January one here is going to actually not come out in the end of February, but it's going to come out on March 9th. And the reason for that is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics uses that time to re-estimate everything from the past year. So this is their calibration time. They actually use that QCEW data that we have on our second part of that document. They use that and other data to help re-estimate what happened in 2020. And so that's why for that 1 month, it lags. So you'll see March 9th comes January, and then March 23rd, in this case, becomes February's data. And then as you can see, generally it follows around the 3rd week of every month. So I would say if you're gonna start this in March, for example, you might as well wait till the end of March and just go ahead and get that February data, because that's gonna be the 1 month where you're gonna get that. So let's go back here. Now we're gonna take this and we're just gonna copy. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. So we're going to go over here and we're not going to just paste, because if we just paste, we get this and it loses its formatting. You could do that, but now you got to go back and reformat. So what I'm going to do, and this is a trick we learned at Merrick a long time ago, because we needed to basically have a lot of people making quick documents, is that we learned the best way to paste with quality is to do a picture. And so we paste enhanced meta file, and that's what I do here. And then you have a nice formatted thing. Now, the only trick though, is that if you resize things by anything but the corner, it's going to stretch things. And so you don't want to do that. If you resize, you always want to grab a corner, and then boom, it resizes and keeps everything right. So there, we're done. We're done with that part of it. Now, we're going to go to the QCW. So here we have, again, the instructions in red. We have the link.
Can you zoom in a little bit on this one as well? Thanks.
Yes,
Perfect.
definitely. So here we have, again, what that data is. We have a link, and then we have the steps. So we're going to go to the Merrick site, and I've shown a screen here of what that'll look like here. We're going to select these areas, select a table, cut and paste the table into here, and then we'll have our data. So let me go ahead and walk through that. So here we have the quarterly census of employment and wages by geographic area. You'll see this note up here, just disregard it. You got the latest data here. This is actually a feed directly from the BLS site. So it actually updates from them. Now, we don't want Missouri, but you could get Missouri here, but in this case, we're going to go to a county. And then we're going to choose the sub area, Dade County in this case. Now, the beauty of this site is that it defaults to the latest available information. So right now, the latest available information is 2020 second quarter private ownership high-level industries. Now, I could go back to a prior quarter, but if I tried to go to third quarter 2020, I will not find anything. So I'm just going to leave the default here because it already tells me that. Now, I have the choice to go down to different digits, but the high level is the best. So let me do high level here, first off, for Dade County. So we see Dade County, QCEW, second quarter, and we see some information here. If I choose 2-digit, I can see that 2-digit that you're familiar with, but you see a lot more NAs, right? So a lot more NAs, and that's why this is a little bit more problematic, because you're just not going to get the details that you're going to get from having the higher level. So that's why we choose the higher level. And the beauty is that it's already done for us. It's already what is a default. So all you have to do is go, okay, well, I'll take that. Now you can download the data in many formats, and that's great if you want to download the data. I use this little shortcut of just copying and pasting. So I'm going to copy. Here, I'm just going to paste. Now I'm going to just paste it. I can just paste it special. So it just updates the data. And it's kind of a little mixed up here. It doesn't look great, but I really don't care about this table as much because this is really just my update table. The table below actually adjusts to this table up here. So this basically looks at the table above and it grabs the information. So for example, you grabbed April, May, and June employment, but we only want to show June employment in this case. Now I could have averaged the employment, I can do other things, but we're going to keep it simple here and just have this information summed up. So here we have Dade County, and we have some information around total establishments, 149. Then we have it broken out by our different industries. And we have where we have our LQ 9.5, really high in here. It's 8 companies, not a lot of companies, 220 employment. You can see it went down a little bit. Construction went up a lot, 23 jobs in that 1 year's time. So there's some information here that's pretty interesting. And you can see leisure and hospitality went down. This is June of 2020, right? So this is why this is kind of useful information. So the EMSI does some estimates, and we could, you could certainly show them this information from EMSI. But the beauty of this is that it's really kind of just exactly what you get from administrative data, and it really isolates, in this case, sometimes some really important issues. So now all we're going to do is copy. And then I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to use that same trick of pasting an image, a picture. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to do paste special, and that's in the instructions too, enhance meta file. And all of a sudden I've got that, and then I can shrink it up just a wee bit on those corners and just get it aligned, and boom, I'm done. I actually move it over here a bit. And then I'll usually shrink things up to just kind of align with other text. And that's all I had to do. Now I'm going to save that. Lastly here, we're going to go to the BEA site to get the population and the GDP. Again, there's instructions, but here we're grabbing data straight from a narrative website. So we're going to pick Missouri. And then we're going to go down to Dade, display. And then we're going to see right at the top, 2019 population was 7,561. So I'm just going to copy that, and they're 100th in rank. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. I'm just going to paste special, just the text. And I'm just going to change this to 100. So this is one where you just change it yourself there. And then for GDP, we'll go back here, and we're going to scroll down. There's some interesting data here, but we're going to scroll down and look at GDP. Now this is in thousands of dollars here. So it's not 198,000, this is 198 million. So it's 198 million. I can simply copy that. Go over here. Now, if I just paste it, it's going to give me the format that was in the website. So I'm going to again do paste just the text. And then it was ranked 104th in the state. All right, and then we're done. So then all I have to do down here is, if I want to update a message, I can, and we are done. We've actually walked through the whole update. Now that was obviously a walkthrough, took time. I think with Maria, if I'm not wrong, it took you 20 to 30 minutes to do one. But as you can imagine, updating this once you're doing this monthly should take a lot less time. So let me get back to the other PowerPoint real quick, because now we're at the Q&A point, actually. So there's really nothing else to show other than you can make this more or less than if you don't want to do all the details, but this kind of fills out that page pretty well. So let's talk questions, let's have some discussion.
Alan, one quick question. Would you say that when you send those econ updates, is that a good time when we should be checking for updates on this data as well?
We do the MEI is 2 times a month. So we do one in the beginning, usually the middle or the middle of the end. So I would say it's a good time during the last week of every month. Probably put that on your calendar, because by that time, the labor force data will be updated. We'll be close to having an MEI around that time. So that's a good timing for it. You don't have to do that together, but if you want to, I like that idea of sharing that out. So I would say the latter part of the 3rd week or the 4th week of every month, just if you want to do this, put it on your calendar, and then your monthly data will be updated, and then you can check your quarterly real quick. But again, that's only going to change every 3 months. And I forgot to add one last thing. When you do send this around, you probably just want to do a save as a PDF, because then once you do that, it's just really clean, and you've got a nice PowerPoint, or I'm sorry, a PDF that it can't be messed up accidentally, right? So it's just a nice PDF, and it looks nice as well.
I'll add too, if you're stretched for resources, I know there's a lot of vacant positions right now. I know a lot of you are covering for other positions. Because the majority of this is quarterly, don't feel like you have to put this on your calendar every month. I think you would get most of the benefit from doing quarterly updates. So like I said, this is just a suggestion. It's not something you have to do, but we, based on Katie's suggestion, Alan put this together for you guys. We tested it with a 18-year-old freshman we have that works here in Exceed. Maria tested it. We're definitely open to updates and improvements, but don't feel like this is a burden. If this is not on your work plan, you know, we're just here to be a resource for you guys. And like I said, if I were doing it, I would probably do it quarterly.
Yeah, it's one of the things that what we know about, at least the experience with sharing information like this, is that, you know, we provide a lot of information for you to share, obviously, and we want you to definitely share that. But things like this can personalize a little bit if you choose to want to do this. But also, just again, it gets your name out there with stakeholders a lot, which is really important. Visibility with this sometimes is part of the benefit of this, is that you're really getting yourself out there. You just want to, by going through this process, taking the 20 or 30 minutes whenever you do update this, it also helps you just kind of be more aware of what's actually happening in the county, to look at Dade County and go, oh, you've lost 18% of your employment in leisure and hospitality. That's really significant. And so you can, you know, send this along and go, hey, I just wanted to update you with this. Here's the 20 June numbers. Just want to show you this information. It becomes a vehicle for you to have an opening to talk with people about stuff, and something that's easy to digest, and not an overwhelming burden for you. But again, it's up to you if you want to do this.
So Alan,
go ahead. Hannah.
Yeah, thanks. Misty Ritter had a question in the chat I want to make sure was addressed. Okay. She said, at what point should we exclude data such as the 1022 line that has the NA? Is there any time that we shouldn't share information or exclude it?
No, I would not put it in there. I would put it in there, but you knowing what it means, and when you email this out to your stakeholders going, here's what it is. You've got a little text in there that says NA means this. So that's helpful. They should be able to read that and see it. But I wouldn't exclude data, because there is always some information in there. So for example, I'm going to zoom in. Well, 400 might really be big. But so with this, we see, for example, that information is one firm. That's why it's excluded. You know, that's why you don't see it. Here, 5 firms. And so but you see one firm. So you do see some data. And sometimes you will see things like this, where you'll see in financial services 12 firms, but you still have the average wage. You just don't have the change year over year. It's probably because it was a very insignificant number, you know, and so they didn't show that. So there's sometimes information there, but I would just say use it as is. Just be cognizant that this is why there's an NA there. It's a good question, though.
Now, Alan, I know that there can be danger in sharing sometimes information with the public, and when they can't have the context, although this seems pretty straightforward. So do you feel comfortable having this tool, which is, pretty attractive too, shared on some of our social media outlets. I mean, most people aren't going to use it, but it's just one of those things that gets people's ideas that like we do this kind of stuff,
Right.
Would it be safe enough, you think, that wouldn't call a lot of people calling this up or,
Oh,
or getting
absolutely.
confused?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One, a little bit of confusion's not a bad thing. I mean, a little bit of, hey, why does there an NA, and asking you about that is a good thing. That they're curious about this and you have the answer. Listen, the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects this. This is administrative data. This is not a survey estimate. This is real data, but they have to protect those private companies. And most people understand that and they really respect that. We don't want to show what company X makes in wages. That's not fair to them. And so that's a good thing. But this is public data. And that's the benefit of this in terms of EMSI is not public data. They just can't go see this. It gives us more data information. It's very useful. But the beauty of this is absolutely public data. So you are spurring, in a sense, some discussion elements, which is good. I think that's good that they see you as someone who knows a little bit about this. If they asked you, well, tell me a lot more about this one topic and you don't know, give me a call, right? Email me, we'll help you get them the answer. But you want to be seen by your community as someone who's conversant in this. I think that's helpful for you as a person in your community, that you're not just passing along every data element. And if somebody asks you, you're like, I don't know, I have no idea. You want to be able to share some of this with a little bit of background, knowing that you don't have to overwhelm them or yourselves with understanding the nuances of everything. You've got us to back you up. But that's the beauty of this, is definitely share it because it is public data.